Hey, how are you? Today I'm in the forest together with water and the mountain, my most favorite place. Mountains, water, forest, really anything in nature. There's just so much power and energy. I don't know if you have also noticed this. For me, you know, it's so quiet, but at the same time, there's such a deep, profound power and energy. And I feel it's like this with everything in life. Once we go below the surface, you know, below, beyond the noise, and noise can be on many different levels, you know. We can have noise just in terms of actual noise, sounds, um, distractions. But noise can also be like emotional noise and noise in our thought patterns. For example, during the day, if you observe yourself and if you observe your thought patterns, you might realize that there's a lot of randomness to it. And related to the thought patterns, our emotional patterns during the day, there can be a lot of noise. And it could be, emotions of all different kinds, not necessarily only like stressful emotions and fear, anxiety, but even some emotions that we consider to be good, like pleasure and some sort of excitement. And some of these are addictive, you know. When we accomplish something, we get dopamine releases, and that makes us feel good. But whether it's good or bad, I think that's not the point. The question is just, is this surface level or is this really beyond the surface? And I can notice this in my day-to-day life so much in any given day, especially during the week. So much noise level, activity in every dimension, thought-wise, emotion-wise, in terms of activity. And when I go into the forest or in nature, especially during days where I don't need to be so active, then I can just feel that there's another level and dimension that is just much more profound. There's a certain stillness, and initially when we get into it, it might feel like there's a level or there's like a little bit of boredom. And when we feel boredomness, boredomness is just something on the level of our minds, and that our minds attach the label to that this is boring, and then we try to escape it. It's really interesting when you observe this, and I really encourage you to try to observe this, because once you observe it, you can, go beyond it. So if we're willing to go beyond the initial sense or kind of perception of boredomness, then especially if you go into nature or into meditation, which is the same thing, we're touching a certain dimension of meditativeness, stillness, and the nature of it is just completely different. It's just so much more profound. And so one thing also that I notice is when it comes to making decisions, oftentimes I found myself trying to figure out what's the best course of action to take on a certain kind of crossroad, whether it's going to be like, you know, in terms of a certain business decision, or in terms of certain other contexts in life, whether it's be relationships or whatever it might be. Oftentimes I found myself to be a very analytical kind of guy who's trying to figure out things in the mind. And at some point I realized that making decisions, especially like, you know, profound decisions that have like an implication and an impact on our life, just using the rational mind and rational decision making processes, you know, trading off pros and cons and trying to just think through it, figure it out, is not really always the best way, and it can be really exhausting. And do you know that when you're trying to really figure something out, it's really important to you, and you try and figure it out with your mind, and it becomes exhausting and you just don't seem to make any progress? And ultimately, you know, we really need to doubt if our mind is always the best tool for that. It's a very powerful tool, but at the end, a lot of the capability of our mind has developed over, you know, the problem of survival. So in many ways, when we try to make decisions, our mind is still in that habit of trying to, you know, ensure survival and avoid danger. So fear is always a big factor. And then when we have an emotion, you know, oftentimes what our minds do is they just come up with thoughts that justify those emotions. So the question is really, how rational is this? So another approach is that I'm trying to do more and more, and that I find more and more powerful, is, you know, that you bring yourself into a place, an inner place of stillness and meditativeness. For me, that's a lot of times, you know, of course, practicing meditation, but also going into nature is like a portal to that dimension for me. And then what I realize, and what you might realize, when you come to a state of inner stillness and meditativeness, suddenly you just know from a much deeper level what's the right thing to do or not to do. You don't have to make a decision. You know, you much more have like a realization of what's the right thing. And it comes just from a much, much deeper place where it doesn't leave you any doubt. Doubts come when you later go back into your mind and trying again to discuss it, because maybe suddenly you're in a state of fear and anxiety, and then doubts creep in. Because doubts are just, you know, a manifestation of that in the mental level. So oftentimes I think the best thing we can do is to deliberately skip the mental process altogether in certain situations, not always. To deliberately decide not to go by, you know, the process of the mind, but instead of trying to let the answer arise from a deeper level. And we can do that when we really, you know, ask for the answer and bring us to that state where we are connected to the inner point of stillness, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through, you know, going to nature, or maybe even prayer for some people. So I encourage you to try that out. To try to, you know, instead of figuring things out and deciding, making decisions, instead of that, try to bring yourself to a point where the answer and the knowledge just arises and doesn't leave any room for any doubt whatsoever. I hope this encouraged you, and I would love to hear when you try this, if it helped you, if it works for you, and what's your experience with it. I would love to read from you. So leave a comment. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so that you get the new videos every week. And well, I hope I see you guys next week. Bye from the forest.